lead, arsenic, deadly nightshade, all that and more on this week's Ancient Journey, Looks That Kill. But before we begin, don't forget, if you enjoy our content, hit that like button, share the video, and subscribe. Now let's get started. Factory work in the 1900s wasn't glorious and it wasn't easy, but it was a means to an end for many people of the time to put food on the table and provide for their families. 3 factories had opened in different locations in the early 1900s, and the job the factories offered was a fairly simple one: painting the hands and faces of clocks and watches with a self-luminous paint. The factories hired mainly women to accomplish the job. A steady hand and a fine-tipped brush was used to accomplish the task of painting the small clock or watch faces. And in order to keep the paintbrush tips sharpened to a fine point, rags or a water rinse was used. But supplying the women with rags cost money, and the time it took to rinse brushes out would cost time. Factories assured the women that the paint was harmless and had them use their lips or mouths to moisten the brushes and put a fine tip on them. The factories even gave this process a name, calling it lip dip paint. The women noticed that after a day of work, their lips would glow in the dark, which would lead some of them to paint their fingernails, faces, and teeth with the same glow-in-the-dark paint. It helped them stand out just a bit more in social gatherings. But it turned out the paint was not harmless. In fact, it contained radium, a deadly decay product of uranium and thorium, and the women were ingesting large amounts of it. The radium girls, as they came to be known, began to exhibit the severe and long-term effects of radiation poisoning. Dental pain, loose teeth, and mouth ulcers were just the start. Many women later developed anemia and fractures and necrosis or death of bone in the jaw. Some of the women became sterile as a result of ingesting the glowing paint, and in 1923 the first of the painters died. Before her death, her jaw completely fell away from her skull. By 1924, 50 women had fallen ill and a dozen had perished. The women sued and were eventually winners in court, making history for workers' rights and the labor movement in the United States. They were given a settlement and had their medical expenses paid for by their employer for the rest of their lives. Radium paint was still being used on clock dials as late as the 1970s. If it seems like this is a story of an employer hiding dangers from employees, radium had been used as a cure-all for any and every ailment since it was first discovered. Radium face creams were quite popular. Claiming they were the answer to all your skin troubles, the radioactive cream claimed to rejuvenate your skin, diminish wrinkles, and give you that glow that all women were after. But if the cream didn't make you beautiful, maybe you'd be interested in a radium-infused plate that you could put on your face while you slept. A French company marketed a full line of radium-laced cosmetics under the brand name tho-radia, so you could skip all those radium treatments and just wear radium makeup all day long. The discovery of radium was made by Marie and Pierre Curie in 1898, but the quest for vanity goes back long before that. And as it turns out, men and women were always willing to trade their health and safety for a few good looks. As far back as the Egyptian era, women and men longed for a look that accentuated their eyes. In order to achieve this look, a thick line of paint would be used around the entire eye of both men and women. The paint used was a thick black substance which was made from lead. Over time, this poisonous paint would cause severe irritation, mental degeneration, and even death. During Roman times, lead was used in face creams to fix up your complexion. Lead cream masks were extremely popular. Users would end up with facial sores and lead poisoning, all for the sake of some smoother skin. In the 1700s, women and men would use a lead-based powder to give their skin a youthful and porcelain-like complexion. The lead powder used in the 1700s contained quite a bit more lead than the Roman creams did, and put many users into an early grave. Lady Coventry, a famed beauty of the time, would apply this powder daily to keep her well-known beauty intact, and it would put her into the grave at the young age of 27. In the 16th century in Italy, the porcelain skin look wasn't all the rage. Instead, it was thought that large pupils made women look more innocent, younger, and feminine. So beauty lovers discovered that the leaves from a certain plant, plucked and crushed, could be made into eye drops that would cause the user to have large, dilated pupils. The plant would be given the name belladonna, or beautiful woman, by the Italians. The belladonna plant goes by another name, deadly nightshade, and frequent use of the product caused blindness, fevers, and even death. Eventually, people smartened up a bit, learning that lead and deadly nightshade were not good for us. So cosmetic companies turned to a new compound to beautify the masses: arsenic. Arsenic would kill off red blood cells, which in turn would give users that lovely porcelain skin look. The arsenic would kill off skin problems such as acne, and if the user stopped using it, the acne would return with a vengeance, making the customer use even more of the product. But even after so many health issues and deaths from these products, they would just be remarketed as new and improved or safer, so that people would continue to use them. Dr. Mackenzie's improved, harmless, arsenic complexion wafers are just one example. When porcelain skin and large pupils just won't cut it, there's another feature that can be enhanced: eyelashes. Long, thick eyelashes have been sought after for quite some time, and in 1899 a procedure is invented to give women those luxurious lashes permanently. This time it's not poison that does a trick, but rather a needle and thread. That's right, a strand of long hair would be sewed directly into the customer's eyelid to create the illusion of fuller, thicker lashes. But if you weren't into the whole needle thing, luckily for you, there was another product on the market. Lash Lure was one of the very first mascaras on the market, a product brushed onto the eyelashes to make them appear darker and fuller. Lash Lure claimed that it had the ability to dye lashes permanently, and also that its users would radiate personality. Lash Lure used an aniline dye in their product. Aniline dye was popular in hair colorings in the 1930s and was used without many problems in those products, but Lash Lure used over 30 times more aniline than hair dyes did, and also had the user apply the product directly to one of the most sensitive areas of the body, the eyes. Aniline is a toxic compound, and Lash Lure had users slathering their eyelids with it. It wasn't long before injuries began piling up. A wealthy socialite appeared in the newspaper with nothing but scar tissue where her eyes had been. She had been permanently blinded by the Lash Lure. In 1934, another woman had her eyes swell shut immediately after applying Lash Lure, and she later died of blood poisoning. Lash Lure would stay on the market, injuring many until 1938, when the newly formed Food and Drug Administration would remove it from the shelves. In 1939, Ray Bolger had been cast to play the Tin Man in the movie The Wizard of Oz. Buddy Ebsen and he then traded roles in the film. Ebsen had been cast to play the Scarecrow in the movie. Bolger would keep the Scarecrow role in the film, and Ebsen would begin to work on becoming the Tin Man. Ebsen recorded all of the songs in the movie and had 4 good weeks of rehearsal, and then began working with MGM Studios on costumes for the Tin Man. MGM had tried covering Ebsen with foil, silvery paper, or cardboard masks to make him look like he was made of tin, but finally settled on a silvery paint they applied directly to his skin. Just 9 days into filming, Ebsen experienced shortness of breath and severe cramping. Eventually, his lungs failed. He would remain hospitalized for 2 weeks. His replacement, Jack Haley, would apply the same makeup, and it would cause him to come down with a severe eye infection. The paint that MGM Studios applied to the Tin Man was full of aluminum powder. Actress Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch in the film, would receive burns on her face from the copper mixed into her makeup, which made it turn green. Maybe you won't be a movie star, but you still want to look good. But if you do, be careful. Good looks still come with a price. If you enjoy those full, luscious lips that you get when applying your favorite lipstick, keep in mind that, to this day, all lipstick still contains some amount of lead. Thanks for watching, and thanks for sharing the journey.